According to a survey of hiring decision makers conducted by Indeed, 86% of respondents say that they're finding it challenging these days to hire tech talent. And 56% of respondents admit that they're hiring talent even if they're not an exact fit for a job description in tech. Linc Kroeger is on a mission to ensure that those in rural and underserved communities have the first crack at being the first in line to fill the tech talent gap. He is the president and CEO of Night Moves, a limiting profiting company creating the next generation of elite technology professionals through extensive training in technology disciplines with an intentional focus on serving rural, Native American, and underserved communities to break through the barriers which prevent socio-economic inclusion for all. Kroeger's also been recognized for his work in technology by the state of Iowa and the United States Congress. One of his other passions includes doing all he can to help lower the cost of college and give the next generation a chance to thrive. Kroeger joined me this week to have a conversation about the advancement of technology and how we can get more players in the game in order to advance careers in tech forward. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about closing the tech talent gap. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. This is such a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, Linc, I know that you are the president of Night Moves, which is all about helping people from rural and underserved communities sort of gain access to the tech talent sector. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about the great work that you do.
Yeah, so we work in, like you said, rural, urban, underserved, and Native American communities, and we have a very unique training program that we bring, when we'll start working typically in freshman through the junior year in high school, and getting young people interested in a career in technology. And that's really the first step, right? As our young generation love technology, they use it, but there's not a high interest in getting involved in technology careers. So that's the first piece we do, is we bridge them to go, oh, wow, I had no idea I was actually interested in this. And then we get them enrolled in some software development courses. And once they get a set of software development courses completed, they go into our training program. Usually it'll be 6 months to a year out of high school, they would, or maybe even right out of high school, they could enter our program. And then by the time they complete our program, which is the full end-to-end program is 12 months, they're better prepared than a 4-year computer science degree. They have the job. They're making great money. They can stay in the community that they want to live, and they have no college debt.
Well, that's certainly an innovative way to look at education. And you've said that the tech talent gap is the widest you've seen it, and that's 35 years you've been doing So I'm wondering if you could dive just a little bit deeper in some of the concerns and you have in this area, and why do you think it's such a big problem?
Well, some of it's in 35 years, like when I started 35 years ago, right, there weren't even networks, right? There was no internet. It was mainframes for the most part, right, with terminals that hung off the mainframes. So, and it was mostly scientific, a lot of Fortran and, COBOL came out for reporting in the business. But, technology is so pervasive in everything now that it's just so permeated all, whether you're in accounting or whether you're in, marketing, it really doesn't matter. Technology plays a key role. So that means there's more technology professionals needed. So part of it's really the shortage is just due to an explosion of demand. And the other is, we're not good in the United States at helping young people understand what a career looks like, right? We've made it look boring. We've made it look like you've got to be, a nerd or a complete introvert. It's a very, creating technology is a very innovative team oriented approach, and just getting that, what it really is out is what's really key. So, to answer your question, Kevin, it's an explosion of need for technologists. So there's just so many more needed, and we're just not good at conveying to young people why they would be interested. And then the third is there's a massive drought of people capable of teaching technology skills. So I visit high schools across the country, community colleges. For high schools and community colleges to actually be able to get someone who can teach software development, it's extraordinarily difficult. And software development's a little unique, right? Is like in Iowa, where I live, the average age of someone who enters a code camp is 36 years old, right? So, it's that's obviously well out of high school, right? But so people in code camps and those kind of adult learning programs, they can handle online training and video training, but we see a very high dropout rate in high school students in like software development, where it's online or it's video, right? We'll see really around 75% dropout rate. So it's very different when you're young and you're taking a course and it gets hard or you get stuck. It's just easy to quit, right? Whereas an adult, you keep going, okay, this is hard. I've done a lot of hard things before. I'm going to watch the video again. I'm going to read something else. But, having those actual instructors and real human beings to interact with at younger ages, I would say is, my perspective of the third big hurdle of why we have such a gap in the talent today.
Yeah, and like one of the reasons, or one of the ways we can close this talent gap is infusing more folks with disabilities into the tech talent sector. I was personally born with the cerebral palsy, and I also work with organizations to help increase their inclusive hiring. So I was excited to talk to you today, primarily because I wanted to ask you about the role that technology can play for folks with disabilities and providing them opportunities as well.
Well, and absolutely, Kevin, and you look at too, COVID has really enabled, it's been a positive in the work from anywhere movement, right? It's been a negative in most areas, in the vast majority of areas. But from, it's just in the technology scene, it's been an absolute, work from home. So that means we need to get the education to people with disabilities, because now they can get the job. And that's really a primary mission of Night Moves, right? Is since we're focused heavily on rural and Native American communities, is they already have that problem, right? Where the commerce centers aren't near them. So Night Moves is really perfectly positioned to come alongside and help in the mission of people with disabilities to get the education and then get the bridging to the jobs that are out there. Since, these tech jobs, I mean, if you can do these jobs in India, why can't you do them in Ontario, right? I mean, or, whatever, in Ontario is a big city, so that's a bad example, but, some small town in Canada or the United States or wherever, right? Is you should, as long as you can get great broadband to your community, you should be able to do these jobs. And, and broadband's quickly is quickly getting out there with all the the state and federal work that's happening in community work.
And you said that we also have to work on unleashing the digital innovation. So what does that mean to you as well?
Yeah, so if you look at the typical investment we make, let's say like the Silicon Valley investment, right, of whether that's Uber or Airbnb or you name the technology area or the startup kind of tech area, it's those innovations are being made to solve a problem, but they really end up the investment from those is to make people rich, right? So you look at those investors, they're looking to make a lot of money, right? Whereas the digital innovations that we create them to enrich other people's lives. So when I say that, and this is actually a big reason that young people are interested in the Night Muse program, because our primary training approach is creating technology solutions that solve public benefiting causes like hunger, homelessness, sex trafficking, drug addiction, disaster relief, right? So we'll pick a high impact area, helping people with disabilities, right? What's the innovation that should be happening to disrupt all these problems that are disrupting society? And then we'll put teams of students on that that are led by professional technologists, right? So that's something that's unique about our core training program is we're not classroom based, it's not grade based. You only complete the training when you've demonstrated you can do the job. So when you go to an employer, it's an easy argument, right? Would you rather hire someone that finished their education or someone who just proved they can actually do the job? And they'll save your company $25,000 to $35,000 in onboarding and orientation and training costs from a 4-year degree graduate because they're just so much better. I mean, they've already done the job. So they've done the job by creating these social innovations, and young people are really, this generation is so meaning and so cause driven that when they see the causes that we're innovating, they're like, wow, I'd love to be part of that. And they're like, well, hey, if you'd love to be part of it, then join us. And then they say, well, I don't know anything about technology. Well, exactly. Sign up for this course next semester. See if you like it. If you don't, you just took one software development course. If you do like it, then keep taking the next ones to get you prepared for our training program.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linc, I'm also curious to ask you you talked about marketing better to other people about tech talent careers, but I'm also curious to ask you, how can we convince or convey to more young people that a career in tech could really be a competitive advantage?
Was the question, why are we not doing that?
No, the question was how do we do a better job of marketing it? And I guess why aren't we doing that? Sure, we'll go with that as well.
Well, that's a great question. I really focus more on solving it than on why it's not being solved on a big macro level. But I can just tell you, Kevin, that when I meet with young people, they just don't have a clue what a career in technology is like. Now, it's more pervasive in rural and Native American, right? And I'm assuming because they're further away from, technology job centers. But even, since we're focused on more the inner city or urban underserved community, definitely not as much in those areas either. So I don't know that I can answer your question there really, but it's one I should be able to answer is why aren't we? Because to me, this is what we should be doing, right? Even if you look at what I've seen, there's 1 to 1.4 million unfilled computer science jobs in the United States each year. They're projected to grow 22%. Maybe we graduate 80,000 people a year for those jobs out of computer science degrees. So it's a high paying area. We don't explain also how creative these are, right? And how I kind of mentioned that earlier. So, that was a long answer to say, I really don't know the answer to that question is why aren't we getting this out to students more? Because I can tell you, if I get 30 minutes in front of a group of 15 to 25 high schoolers, I'll get 30 to 40% of them to say, hey, that's interesting. I'll sign up for a software development course. And I don't know that I'm like the sharpest tool in the shed. So if I can get in front of young people in 30 minutes and get 30 to 40% of them to say, I'll take a course, I have to assume we're just not trying very hard, Kevin, and getting the right message out to people.
Yeah, like, do you think that maybe creating a pathway for tech cooperative education or co-op opportunities is a way to sort of close that gap?
And tell me what you mean by cooperative.
Just like internship opportunities once you're in high school, or maybe a volunteer perspective when you have to finish volunteer hours. Maybe if we create more hands-on opportunities, do you think that may be a way to sort of close the gap that we're experiencing?
Well, and that's a big aspect of what we do. So I'm going to give you a caveat though that makes us unique. So being in this industry 35 years, right, in the IT, software development, tech industry, one of the big challenges is, let's say someone's a sophomore or junior in a 4-year computer science degree program. Companies have a really hard time taking on interns in software development because let's say you've got a sophomore or junior in college, right? I'm talking college level person, and you bring them in, their value, like I can't tell you how many projects that we gave those interns that were like counting open parking spots in the parking lot, right? Doing studies, because the challenge you have with an internship in software development is, or an apprenticeship, which I'm a big fan of both, but they are so taxing on companies because it's not like you have a welder or you have, an HVAC or someone like that, because a plumber. So let's say you're interning to be a plumber, right? And you're under a master plumber. You can still help them. You can hand them stuff. You can help them be productive, even if it's on remedial things and you're just watching them do it. But in software development, it's not that way. What happens is it's this big sucking sound where your senior people are really just focused on the junior ones, because those junior ones really can't do much to help the senior. So it's so taxing on the senior people. That's what makes internships and apprenticeships much harder in a technology space. Is it's just so expensive, and and your senior people are already typically so overwhelmed with demand for their technology gifts and services and capabilities, that for them to have another project of taking on an intern or apprentice, it's just a major drag to them. So you see a lot of resistance in IT shops to do more in the internship and apprenticeship space because it's so taxing on your senior resources. But that's why within Night Moves, when we put someone at a company, they're actually able to contribute day one when they're on it. So they may come in at an intern level, but they can literally join the team, and you just point them to say, hey, what's my source code system? You give them the lay of the land, and they're actually coding and contributing that week, the first week they're there.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Linc, I also know that you were appointed by Governor Kim Reynolds for 3 years to the Technology Association Board of Iowa, and you've also been recognized by Congress as an innovative leader in the field of rural tech. So tell me what those honors mean to you, and the role you think government has to play in closing the tech talent gap.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Governor Reynolds appointment was to her Empower Rural Iowa Task Force, which is a task force that is a group of people from across the state, obviously rural communities, that we meet. In fact, we just had our quarterly meeting Tuesday in Winterset, Iowa, the birthplace of John Wayne. That's my commercial for Winterset if you're in Iowa, and it's a great museum there.
But you're a great salesperson, Iowa. There you go.
Thanks. So we meet and we look at the problems that are challenging rural communities, and develop solutions, whether that's housing or broadband, childcare. Housing is one of the biggest impediments. And I'd encourage like every state to have those kind of task forces. And then U.S. Congress member Ro Khanna, who represents most of Silicon Valley, he did recognize my program as being the most innovative at bringing rural tech jobs to rural. So, to answer your question, what role does government have? I absolutely believe that, creating these kinds of task force and looking at, how do we solve these problems? How do we leverage technology? How do we bridge the technology divide? And that's as much in urban underserved or inner city as it is in rural, right? If you look at the opportunities available to people in suburbs versus, true inner city, right? I mean, it's a totally different spectrum. So, having these focus groups, having these teams that are measured, right, each quarter, it's what are we progressing? What are we doing to move the needle to get to make life better for our community members? And just being advocates, and working bipartisan. So, Congressman Ro Khanna, he's a progressive California Democrat, right? And he comes to Iowa all the time. He invests in the communities. He works with us. And you've got Governor Reynolds, right? A Republican, Midwestern, governor. And the two of them get together and we do events, we work together. But, working across the aisle, I can't think of a more important time in my lifetime of getting our government officials to work together and put down, the fly swatter hitting each other and creating all the rhetoric, right? Let's work together. Let's advance people's lives. And I would say also, there's obviously, I'll say this more in the mid-career space. Our primary focus is on youth. So 85% youth focus, because if we want to get more people into technology, you have to start younger. And if we want to get more diversity into technology careers, we have to start younger. But we had a great program where helping solve the biggest challenge we have with mid-career workers. And when I say mid-career, right, somebody probably 28 to 60 years old, and they're needing to transition in their career to upskill. Well, the challenge for mid-career people is, you get somebody out of high school, if they were going to do something, they weren't going to get paid anyway. So for them to go to training and not get paid for it and pay for it, that's just the normal standard, right? But if if you have a kid and you're renting an apartment and you're needing to reskill and you need to take 6 months to go to that training, how do you do that, right? I mean, you've got rent to pay, you've got mouths to feed. So we got a fantastic grant once that actually let us pay our participants, our students, to come through our program. And they got paid $15 an hour. They got a computer. They got an expense stipend. They got money to pay for their internet. And that paid their costs for the 6 months of our training program, right? And then graduate and start making $60,000 a year, right? So you take this guy from Webster City, Iowa, who was stocking shelves at Walmart, and 6 months later, fast forward, and he's making $60,000 a year, doing fantastic in a tech job. But the only reason that was there is we had the grant that could pay that individual to get paid, so he could not have to work at Walmart, right, to pay his bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to get your description of how do you define or describe a technology or tech talent difference maker?
What I think, and correct me if I misinterpreted that, but you mean like if I'm talking to an individual and I'm assessing would they be a good fit? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, along those lines. And what I mean by that is when you look at someone, or you have a perfect vision of someone who you want to sort of bestow the talent or the title of a tech talent difference maker. What sort of qualities do you look for in that person, or how would you just define or describe them?
Well, I'll throw out the first I would say is a continuous learner, right? Someone, and in my software development realm, we'll use the expression a polyglot. And, poly means many, glot means language. So, there's some people in the world that are Java developers or C# developers, right? You ask them and they go, I'm this kind of technology. Well, you really don't want to have that mentality. You want to have the mentality as, hey, what problem am I solving? And what's the value of that problem? and what's the technology that best solves that problem? And if I don't know it, I'll learn it. If you have that attitude, you're going to be successful in this. If you have the attitude of, geez, I know Java, that's what I know, and somebody comes to you to solve a problem and you go, well, I know Java, so I solve it in Java. Probably not the right best mindset for a long-term career in this, right? Because technology changes. Value doesn't change, right? You always need to understand the value of what you're solving, and you need to look at the short and long-term aspects of the technology. I'd say the second thing, Kevin, that I'd look for, and it might be the first thing, but these are the two that are my personal, is your ability to work as a team. When I entered technology in the 80s, it was very different, right? I mean, the persona of a technologist was somebody you could put in the basement, just slide them a pizza under the door once in a while, and this code magically pops out. Today, I would say some of the best people I've hired in the last 5 years in the field, they had foreign language degrees, right? Out of Habitat for Humanity and never had any professional technology training, but they have these abilities of working as a team, because technology today, you're typically in teams of 5 to 12 people, and you're pairing, or, it's that whole agile aspect. Just the short version of it is they know how to work collaboratively as a team and just keep solving the problem and working together. So I'd say continuous learners and the ability to work as a team. I would not even say people that are strong at math. That used to be it, but you need to be able to do math, but it's not like you don't need calculus to be a software developer unless you're going to work for NASA or rocket science. But really, teamwork, be a continuous learner.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm just building on what you've said previously. I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of being nimble and ready to move sort of with the changes or roll with the punches when you're in business or the corporate world, and really embracing a technology as the wave of the future. How important do you think that is in order to continue to advance forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, change is here to stay, especially in technology. You might see in your career in technology, I mean, I can't tell you how many just absolute times I've had to reskill. Just simply, gosh, even used to, you'd have the server in the same building as you, and now all the servers are in the cloud, and just something simple like that changes how you have to look at, building software products. I could list 50 of those areas, and not just and the technologies themselves, right? I mean, geez, think back in the DOS days of the mainframe, and then you get to Windows, right? And client server and all the evolutions. You just have to be nimble and ready to learn, and be adaptive.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you serve underserved and rural communities in the work that you do, it's coming up. I'm going to ask you, how do you think we can do a better job of really funding the resources that are needed to get to the communities on where they're really underserved when it comes to technology?
Well, we can always look to the government, but we can also, but I try not to depend on the government for anything. And you'll see, if you hear me talk or, share, I'm never like pressing for more, that's just not my space, is because, to me, the easy button is say the government should solve it. And I'm all for the government doing more, right? I've already talked about one area. But, I want to look at creatively, and also be innovative on this. Like, I can tell you something that I was not expecting, but in inner cities, the number one group that reaches out to me that goes, hey, I heard about what you're doing. Could we help? We've got this space, and these are organizations that have a building in inner city, right? Gang oriented, rough neighborhoods. And they say, I've got this space and I'd love for, could we transform it into a training space and use it for the community? And those organizations are churches. And you think about, churches are empty 6 days of the week with buildings. So we build all these big buildings and, and have utility costs and all this stuff for something that's probably open, really 4 hours a week for getting use. Well, why not leverage those and, people in the community that have the volunteers to go out and reach the people, right? And and the other piece too is, realistically, I'm not just going to drive into, North Omaha or North St. Louis to an underserved area and be the savior of that area, right? It's going to be the people in that community who love their community, who love the people in the community. It's going to be serving and supporting them to get this mission done. So, Kevin, I think we've got to be more innovative. We've got to care. We can't, most communities I work in, it's trying to pull the people out of those underserved areas and into the suburbs for the training. And when I meet with cities, it usually has this progression. They'll go, oh, you know what? We're North St. Louis. We already have 2 programs. And I say, okay, you've already got 2 programs doing technology, but let me ask you something. If you and I went out right now and knocked on 100 doors in Ferguson or North St. Louis area, of those 100 people, how many of them would say, hey, I know about those 2 programs and I know why they would be interesting to me? And they go, well, that's a great question. I don't know that anybody would know about them. Okay, so you're really just checking the box that you have something there. So this is a very passionate area for me, Kevin. So I'm going to stop my answer there. I feel like most of what we do is check a box, and it's not integrated in the communities with the people, serving the people there. And we can't have that savior mentality of coming in and saving. We've got to have the serving mentality. How do we come in and help those people succeed in these neighborhoods?
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar to hiring people with disabilities. It's more than checking a box or getting rid of attitudinal barriers, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. I know one of your other passions, Linc, is also lowering the cost of college and really trying to find a more affordable pathway to post-secondary education. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about it.
Yeah, so the way our program costs around $20,000 to actually train individuals. But the way we do it is, since we already have employers lined up to hire our graduates, once they complete our program, is they don't pay anything until they graduate our program, and then they actually become employees of Night Moves. And by the way, since I haven't plugged my, the name of it, it's Night Moves, like a chess piece, not like the Bob Seger song. So nightmoves.org. But so after you get done with our training, that's at least 6 months long, is then you come to work for us. Now you're only going to make $15 to $20 an hour. But the other money we make off of you during that 6 months, because we're a consulting company, so we'll be out having real client companies we're doing work for, and the graduates of our training join our consulting team to do billable work. But while they're doing it, they make a little money, but with the money that we would have made and profited, we take and pay off that $20,000 in education. So by the time they complete that 6-month internship, they can stay to work for us, they can go to work for another employer, but they have no debt associated with it.
Yeah, fascinating. And my final question for you, Linc, has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
Well, for me, Kevin, it's going to be looking at all these communities that because we serve communities. So we'll partner with a community, and the goal is, whether that's rural, Native American, urban, underserved, and we want to be creating 15 to 25 jobs a year in that community. So, I want my legacy to be looking at these communities and seeing a sustainable trajectory of a future for people, where we can look at inner cities and not see gentrification. We can see, okay, yeah, we revitalized that community area, but we didn't push the people out and bring money in to do it. We took the people in that community, we upskilled them, we brought the jobs to them, and we let that community get revitalized by the people, because of the prosperity of the people growing in those communities. That would be the legacy I'd want.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Linc, tell me, if people want to get connected with Night Moves, or you personally, and they get connected with all the great work that you do, what's the best way they can do that?
Just reach out to us on our website and click contact us on nightmoves.org.
Fantastic. Well, Linc, I really want to commend you on the positive work that you're doing to close the tech talent gap, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me on this a critically important issue, and I want to thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Well, I'm just so grateful you invited me, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.